Last time on D&D featuring Calliope Laurelleaf, the Halfling Bard, Ellie Jubble, the Gnome Ranger Rogue, Phelan, the High Elf Cleric, Talarin, the Wood Elf Ranger, Trogdor, the Dragonborn Barbarian, Torpo, the Hill Dwarf Wizard, and Alaric Lysane, the Human Fighter. Alright, welcome to the Arrival Session 19. This would end up being the final session for this game in total. When this party last played was actually Session 16. Session 17 and 18 had been when Anita stepped in to DM part of the Lost Mines of Phandalin. This session took place, I want to say it was in February of 2022. Prior to that, we had stopped right when COVID hit for this game. We had been playing in person, and a couple of the people were either urgent, needed, so they were not available always on the weekend, and some just did not want to play online, like through Discord and whatnot. So the game went on an indefinite hold after the two sessions that Anita had DM'd. As things began to slowly calm down, we got together for another session and tried to see if it would go through. Everyone had an amazing time. It seemed like it was really fun, but that was over a year ago now, and we've still not returned. I talked about a little bit in the previous game where I mentioned something, I've reached out and see if folks are still interested, and most of them say they are, but some of them have commitments that don't allow it. Some of the people have moved away, like completely out of state, so that makes it very difficult to play in person. And still some are resistant to playing online, which normally I would have been as well. I was always someone who thought of playing in person was the only real way to play, and that was until the pandemic hit, and I learned that if I want to continue playing this, not only this hobby, but something that literally is a mental break for me from the real world and basically an anchor for my sanity, I had to adapt. And so I began playing online, and first I was using the Avri bot, but that took remembering a bunch of commands and different things of importing characters. And every game you did, you had to import that character for that game. It didn't remember depending on what server you were on or anything like that. Then I discovered a browser plugin called Beyond 20, and that was an absolute game changer. Literally a game changer. It made playing online infinitely easier because you're still looking at the character sheet. You're just clicking the stat that will roll it into Discord so everyone can see it. It just did everything so much easier. And it works with D&D Beyond, which is what I was using for my DMing anyway. That said, but I would like to play with this group in person, because one of the wonderful things about this group in particular is we only saw each other once a month. Unlike my work game and off-week game, most of those people I was seeing every day at work, except during the pandemic where we were playing remotely. Even then, I was still quote-unquote seeing them because I was interacting with them through work. But with this game, it was literally just once a month that I was seeing most of these folks and engaging with them. So I'd love to do this game back in person now that things, pandemic-wise, have calmed down. My own life unfortunately has not calmed down. It only seems to get worse, but that's okay. I'm here. I'm going to fight it. We're going to just make things try to survive. But anyway, so the last time we actually played this game where I was DMing was back on session 16. 17 and 18, as I said, was when Anita was DMing, and then the pandemic hit. There was a big gap. So the last thing that happened when I had DM'd for these players was that they had arrived at a town known as Redstone, which there's a video that talks about the legend of Redstone. So if you want to watch that to learn more about Redstone, so I don't have to recap it all, or if you just want to watch the previous sessions of 16, 15, and 14, I think, you'll see what happened last time. But essentially, they were in Redstone, went inside these caves to save some children, ended up going into basically a version of the Feywild, where they fought a coven of hags by making a deal with a demon to basically get these children out from this Feywild and rescue them. Party then left with the rest of the caravan. Basically, there was a human on this new caravan that was with them, because the caravan was originally down to 4 and had grown to a size of 12 now, and there was a human on this caravan named Cortel Barrowspear who basically hired his own guards because he had heard some very, very questionable things about the party. He heard that they were responsible for releasing a fallen angel, that one of their members basically had a gauntlet of very evil power that she couldn't, quote unquote, get off of her hand. And then they went as far as to also employ a number of kobolds on the last adventure where they helped Nicholas, which was a Santa Claus adventure. Cortel is not a big fan of the players, but the last thing they did was basically they went up through Longstone Mountain. It's a very dangerous, perilous journey. It's a path that is very thin. It goes up very high into the mountains where the weather is very unstable, so it'll snow at a moment's notice because the temperature will drop, the visibility becomes horrible, the roads, which are already thin, become extremely slick, so moving through this path on a caravan is very dangerous. And so they had basically taken shelter inside of a cave. That's when Calliope, which is the bard of the group, told the story that basically led to Anita DMing for those 2 sessions. So picking up from there, the party is still inside the cave, and basically a number of the caravans have all put their animals to the back of the cave to get them away from the cold, while a huge bonfire is put at the front so that the smoke blows outward, but the heat stays in the cave. Calliope spends time with the kobolds, learning their tongue and basically some of their lore. So the party is forced to make camp along with the rest of the caravan inside that large cave, and basically take shelter as the snow approaches. Both food and warmth quickly become scarce as the snowstorm rages on relentlessly. The temperature continues to drop throughout the night, making it colder and colder, as well as the game becomes more and more scarce as even they are taking shelter and not out there for the hunters to find. Some of the hunters do manage to find some food, but it's not much. Some return, while some simply disappear in the white falling snow, perhaps lost forever, unable to find their way back because of the snow causing this disoriented appearance that everything just looks the same. The captain of the caravan approaches the party and asks them to see if they can find out what's happening to the hunters, and if possible bring back some food as well. Twerpo offers to remain behind and use her wizardry spells and her general love of simply burning things to keep the fires going and basically provide warmth for the caravan members. This was essentially an easy way for me to explain why she's not with the rest of the party, because she wasn't present for this session. Ellie Jobel tells Talaran that he should go out and scout the area. The 2 talk and Ellie agrees to also go, staying in the bushes the entire time, or trying to anyway, with the snow everywhere. Using her stealth, she provides Talaran with a help action, giving him advantage, and they manage to find some footprints that quickly disappear in the snow. He looks behind him, and already it's nearly impossible to see the mouth of the cave, and they're only about 60 feet away from it. He asks Ellie if they should press on, and if they do, the cave's mouth entrance is going to vanish quickly out of sight. They do, however, discover a large gash marks in the trees, about 12 feet up from the tree's bottom. So whatever has scratched these trees is clearly very tall, and it appears to be like large talon marks that would be something from a giant cat, as if it was stretching and sharpening its claws on the wood. They decide to head back and get the others. However, due to the heavy snowfall, they're not able to actually find their way back. They find themselves being very, very lost, as they've both failed their nature and survival check to try to track the way back. During this time, as they're calling out for the party, they do manage to attract something else. They attract the attention of a pack of winter wolves. Not hearing back from either of the companions, the group decides to try to go out and find their companions. Thankfully, they hear the howls of the winter wolves and basically wonder if that's where their companions are fighting these wolves. So they quickly rush to that sound, constantly stopping in the snow, waiting for the wolves to howl again, moving forward, pausing, waiting for the wolf to howl again, and eventually they do find that indeed both Talaran and Ellie Jobel are fighting these winter wolves. So Calliope and Fallon try to get involved, but they both take a hit from the winter wolf's ability to breathe chilling damage. Eventually, however, the party is able to defeat the large winter wolves. One of the kobolds spots what appears to be a frozen or almost frozen humanoid about 30 feet away. Ellie decides she'll try to stealth and take a look. However, a critical fail, which means she rolled a natural 1 on her stealth check, alerts the humanoid. And as it turns, it's quick to see that this is not someone who is frozen or almost frozen. It's actually something known as a Greater Ghast. This is essentially, if you listen to the previous session, I talked about how I took some monsters and basically just improved their hit dice, but left their attacks and everything the same. Essentially, the reason why there's so much potential combat in this one is it'd been almost 2 years since we've played D&D, and other than Anita, who was playing at Battle Mage every Monday or Tuesday, I believe, and then Jessica, who is playing in my game every Tuesday, the rest of the party has not played D&D in a long time. So I was essentially throwing things at them to make them look at their character to figure out what the difference is between a strength check and a strength save, where their weapons are, what damages do what, what type of damage does a sword do versus what type of damage does a spear do, what spells do what, where do I find those spells, how do I make a savings throw. So that's why this session had quite a bit of combat and a kind of different types of combat. So creatures that could breathe. So now they have this breath weapon. Now you have to make savings throws. So the party would have to look to see how to do these savings throws. And then this Ghast, which is basically a normal Ghast, I've just upped his hit points to make it a quote unquote Greater Ghast, also has basically that touch that can paralyze people. So again, this is all to basically try to refresh my players' memories. It rushes at Ellie Jobel, seeing her due to her critical fail, and she flees back to the party to inform that there is an undead creature headed their way. So she has led this Greater Ghast right back to the party, and it does manage to strike Alaric, who has the most armor on. He fails his savings throw and becomes paralyzed. Trogdor is so disgusted by the creature's appearance, it takes him a moment to recover. This is due to him having a critical fail on initiative, which means he loses his first round. So real quick to go back on that, I have a house rule where if you roll a natural 20 on initiative, it's essentially a sign that your adrenaline is so pumped that in that first round, you have 2 actions. So if you are a spellcaster, for example, you could technically in that moment cast 2 different spells. As long as one isn't concentration, the other one isn't concentration. You still have to follow those same rules. But you could technically like Firebolt and then Fireball if you rolled a natural 20 if you're a spellcaster, for example. And for example, if you're a fighter and you have 2 weapon attacks per round and you rolled a natural 20 on initiative, you essentially have 4 attacks per round. Just that first round. Again, this is just for the first round. After the first round, you just go on your normal initiative number and it's not double. Now, a critical fail means that essentially something has gone wrong. You've either in your haste drawn your weapon and it slipped out of your hands, or you screamed for that turn, disgusted by what you've seen. So in this case, Trogdor, who rolled a critical fail on initiative, was so disgusted by this creature's torn, shredded appearance that he kind of like is startled for that first round of combat. So that's why he does not get a turn on that first round of initiative. The Greater Ghast is driven away by Phelan when she does turn the undead, forcing it to flee despite its ability to have advantage against being turned. During this time, Ellie, who had been hiding behind a large rock, discovers that the rock talks. The Galebdur rises and asks why she's here, and it inquires if she's here about the Yeti and its master. She incites the Galebdur, but the stone face makes it really hard to read, and this is due to rolling a natural 1 and a critical fail on insight. Galebdur basically explains to her that the Yeti and its master, who watches with 4 eyes, had come into the mountain several weeks ago, and ever since then it has decimated the balance of nature and hunted animals for the sheer pleasure of killing rather than hunting out of need. Ellie rejoins the party and basically shares what she's found out from the Galebdur. During this time, the Greater Ghoul returns after the turn effect has been worn off, and this time it's finally defeated. As Phelan is tending to Alaric, who's still feeling the effects of the Greater Ghoul's paralyzing touch, she is suddenly clawed from behind, a surprise attack from the Yeti. Calliope, however, is ready and gets a natural 20 on her initiative, giving her 2 attacks for this first round. The Greater Yeti uses a storm to basically hide itself, creating a disadvantage to attack it since it's nearly invisible against the white blanket of the snow falling. It then uses its gaze, which causes damage and sends Phelan collapsing to the ground, also paralyzed. Alaric is able to stand and uses his lay on hands to remove the effect on Phelan. Despite its ability to use the snow to create disadvantage on attacks against it, the Greater Yeti is eventually defeated. And as soon as it is, you can already guess, more combat. A booming voice shouts, "What have you done?" as a massive and larger than any they had seen before, comes bursting through the trees, blood all over it, and it's holding two weapons and it's swinging wildly. The Enten lands back-to-back natural 20 hits against Trogdor, instantly bloodying him. As the party fights him, most of them observe that most of their weapons aren't doing the type of damage they would expect it to do. None of their weapons are reaching that full potential of doing what it should be doing. And they realize that they need to resort to magic weapons or magic spells. So the party changes their tactics around and begins using magic weapons, even if it means getting close. But failing calls down a lightning storm that does almost enough damage to kill it, and eventually the party works together to bring down the Enten. With the Enten and the Yeti defeated, this will allow the animals in the mountain eventually to repopulate and bring balance of nature to be restored. In the meantime, the party has the carcasses of the 3 wolves that they've killed and a Yeti to bring back as a source of meat to eat for the caravan. And there's a note here that it had almost been 2 years since we had played as a group together because of the pandemic. So I wanted to create combat that was a heavy session with monsters whom I just upped the hit points but kept most of everything else the same. Most of these creatures had a low armor class to allow them to easily be hit, but the party was admittedly rolling exceptionally well anyway, except for a few times where they were rolling critical fails. I wanted to make this a heavy combat so that the players who hadn't played D&D on a more regular session got used to remembering how to make attacks, skill checks, saving throws, advantage versus disadvantage. The idea of the story to truly continue will be on the next session. Still had an absolute fun time with this, and great seeing everyone again with the little heart emoji. And that was almost a year and a half ago, and we've not played. As I said, this game pretty much was put on an indefinite hold. So what I'm probably going to do is not return to this game. Ask those who want to play and that can meet in person to see if they want to start over, essentially with either a level 1 or a level 3 character. I feel like starting them at level 3 would be fine. That way they've got some hit points, some skills, and some spells, even though it's been, once again, a long time since we've played. I really enjoy playing in person with these folks, so I'm hoping that I can basically bring this back despite all the complications in my own life of late. So this is the last one for the Arrival, and so now I'll start doing the work game, the off-week game, and the discovery game, and probably the Shadow Island game. As you can see, I run all different games, and they all exist in the same world, so things that happen in one area will impact other things. So for example, if in one game someone burns down town_A, and group 2 comes to town_A, it's either going to still be burnt down or in the process of being rebuilt. And so there's a lot of stuff that is tied in and referenced throughout all these games. The work game, which is probably the one I'll do next, it's going to be a lot of reading notes, like how I've done this before until the pandemic hit. Can't remember what session we started recording on. I would have to actually go back and look. But once I get to the sessions where I started recording, you won't have me reading it. It's just going to be the recording with some edits in there to clean it up, clean out some of the dead space and stuff like that. Anything that is personally referenced in there that I don't feel like should be for the whole public to consume, I'll be taking those out. But I have there's something like 60 or 70 audio recordings between all of my games now. But like I said, for the work game, it was all done in person until the pandemic hit. So I don't recall what session we started recording, but so for the first couple, you're still going to have to put up with me reading notes. But hopefully you still enjoy this and you keep checking these out. And naturally, if you do enjoy it, like and subscribe and post it around like Reddit, other forums, social media. Word of mouth is the best way of passing things around. I haven't really done much to advertise it yet because I wanted to get a bunch of these audio files in here first before doing any of my own promotion of going out there and doing stuff. But if you're listening to this and you hear it and you like it, feel free to help me out. All right, much love to all of you who are listening. All right, bye. Both food and warmth quickly become scarce as the snowstorm relentlessly... Both food and warmth quickly become scarce as the snowstorm... Come on. I'm not putting outtakes on this one. I don't think I am. Both food